Yay, it works. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our little piece of the internet we call the Ubuntu Community Team Q&A. My name's Alan Pope, and this fine gentleman here is Daniel Hoback. Hello, Daniel.
Hello.
How are you?
Good. How about yourself?
Super. Absolutely super. Couldn't be better. So we do this, for those who don't know, we do this every week, roughly, on a Tuesday at roughly this time. May move when time zones, do silly things like daylight saving and so on. But generally, it's usually around about 1500 UTC on a Tuesday. And the idea of this is that we answer your questions. You can ask your questions in a couple of ways. One of them is if you go to ubuntuonair.com. You'll find the video at the top, and underneath it there's a little chat area where you can chat with everyone else who's watching and ask your questions. Alternatively, if you're of the modern age and you use IRC, then you can open your IRC client and point it to the IRC channel on the Freenode network called #ubuntu-on-air. And in that channel, you'll find exactly the same people who are on the little chat box because it's the same place. So if you have any questions, just ask them in there. Prefix them with the word question, because Daniel and I can then find them. They highlight nicely in our IRC client. And, people can chat amongst themselves, etc. We have a couple of things to mention before we start. So get your questions in. If you don't get your questions in early, then it's possible, because of the slight time delay, that we'll get to the end and your question will be missed off. Don't be sad, and either get your question in early or save it up for next week, or ask us afterwards on IRC. That's fine as well. So Daniel, we had a couple of things to talk about. What should we mention first?
There was one thing I would mention to all the people of the modern age, which is subscribing to all the Ubuntu on Air accounts. So on YouTube, on Twitter, on Facebook, on I don't know where else. There's loads of them. And Google Plus, yes, of course. Because that way we're going to inform you of news shows, already recorded shows. You can go and watch them all back. There's loads of fun and millions of hours of questions and answers and stuff we discussed. It's brilliant. So do it.
Yes, good idea. I completely agree. Sometimes people arrive late and they miss the video, but you can go to youtube.com, Ubuntu on Air channel, and you'll find all the past videos in all their glory, usually with weird thumbnails of us going like that as we're in the middle of answering a question and YouTube snaps. And we could go in and change that. It's more fun not to be honest. So a couple of other things we wanted to mention, things that have been going on recently. We've been talking a lot about Snappy recently, and we've been wanting to help to increase other people's knowledge of how Snappy works and how to build snaps that contain your application or someone else's application. You could create a snap of an application that somebody else has wrote, and then you could contribute your configuration upstream so that they can then continue to make snaps. It's a great way to contribute to an upstream project, actually. We noticed that there's a bit of a barrier because Snap's quite new, and it's a bit difficult for some people to get started. So we started a thing called the Snappy Playpen, which is two things really. It's a GitHub repo. You can easily find it. Just search on your favorite search engine for Snappy Playpen and GitHub, and you'll find it. And in there we have loads of examples. We have a template of what a config should look like, a snap YAML file should look like. And we have a whole bunch that we've contributed, and there's a whole load more that community members have contributed. And so the idea behind the Snappy Playpen is that if you are a developer or you want to contribute to somebody else's project and you would like to snapify or create a snap package of their project, and you want to start from zero, then you could go to the Snappy Playpen, look for projects which use the same kind of technologies. So maybe if it was a GTK project, you might want to look at an existing example of a GTK app that's been packaged, or a KDE app, or a Qt app, or a command line app or a server app or something that's a bit more complicated, that's got daemons and stuff going on. Those kind of examples that we're putting in there, so that you can then learn from that. And they're all very openly licensed, all the config files, so you can reuse them, take them, and do whatever you will with them. So that's the goal behind the Snappy Playpen. It's got a stupid name, partly because it's memorable, and partly because it was the first name we came up with.
You suggested it, right?
Yeah, I suggested it. So if you think the name is stupid, blame me, because yes, that's why. So what else? So as well as the GitHub part, there's the other part, the regular events. Do you want to talk a bit about that?
Yes. Snappy and Snaps always had this open invitation. Like, everybody knew, here's the mailing list, here's the IRC channel, here's the documentation, have fun. That's something we did from the start, but we thought that it would be fun to get people more closely together, and also maybe to attach a theme to an event. So in the beginning, we said, anything goes, just bring your favorite app and we'll snap it together. And that's what people did. Like, we had about 60 people show up. It wasn't just canonical folks. We had random drive-by people who were just curious, which is fantastic, because they all contributed something to the discussion, or even contributed their own snap to it. We had some upstream developers. Like, it was, open source people of the internet basically who showed up, and it was interesting to see, or we're already seeing the effects of this initiative, because if you're first in a new community and the Snap world still is quite new, you obviously run into stuff that isn't documented yet, or it doesn't quite work 100% yet. So you run into these niggly edge cases, and you need to do something about them. And I think we as a team were quite good at, filing a bug report or raising with the people who can fix it. And because Snapd and Snapcraft have this regular release cadence, we already had the next Snapd release come in with loads of new interfaces. It was just beautiful to see that people immediately picked up on those and added them to apps, and then were able to say, okay, this thing didn't work before, it's working now. Or we had similar problems with, or not problems, everybody was writing their own launcher for GTK app. And then David Planella, he came up with a GTK launcher. So we fixed it so that it worked for most of them, and then used that. And
yeah, I think I agree. I think that's one of the things that I found interesting, was that people would create these long, complex YAML files and then have a bunch of scripts wrapping around it to work around some of the limitations, the things that aren't quite done yet. And then when those features are landed, you can then strip out all the stuff that you put in, that the boilerplate that you now no longer need. And it's nice seeing people being able to strip things down. Their package gets smaller, their configuration is smaller, it's less complicated, it'll be easier for someone else to pick up and and copy and paste into their project later.
So I think right now it still takes a special kind of people who have like a bit of a frustration tolerance. Like, people who are comfortable with, like, this is pioneer land, like here huge landscapes and we can do whatever we like. But the feedback loop is quite tight, and it's just fun to be working on this and to see how it evolves. So if you can get yourself behind the vision of, at some stage, just being able to run Snapcraft upload or Snapcraft push, and it will push your Snap to the store, and it will be there for users, and you can pick a release channel and all that good stuff, like, and have that available for everything and just work for everything. Like, if you like that, you can work with us on this. And that's just beautiful to see. Sometimes it's still hard work and everything, and the Snap is 90% done. What do I do now? Like, this is a bit frustrating, right? But we're working on this.
Yeah, and sometimes you have to walk away from your laptop for a bit, and you get blocked on something, and it could be you just don't understand, or you don't know what the config option is. In which case, you can ask. We've got a channel where you can talk to all of us all through through the day and night. If you don't get an answer, then you can just ping us in there, and we'll all get a notification and highlight, so we can scroll back and see what question was asked, and we can point those questions at the right people, or maybe even just point you to an existing Snapcraft YAML or script or whatever that helps you. But like Daniel said, it is the early days, and the Snappy Playpen has a couple. What are we up to now? Like 20 things in there. More than 20.
30, 35, and almost like the same number or more in progress.
Right. So it's early days. When you think of what the entire corpus of free software there is out there, and all the things that are in the archive, some of them don't make sense to make in Snappy packages. That it just isn't appropriate, and some things are part of the core that you don't really need to make GCC into a Snap.
Of course, yeah.
But for other things, it totally does make sense. And for my mind, things that are fast moving, things that are tricky to put into a Debian package, or that upstream developers have had a hard time getting into, not just Debian, but into any distro, they're candidates for being something that might be interesting to Snapify, especially if it's it's something you use, if it's scratch your own itch.
Yeah. Like it might be more interesting to have, I don't know, GIMP from Git, or where new features come in and you're interested in that, whereas running grep from Git is probably less exciting, right?
Yes.
That would only serve like a very few people.
So last week I started making a snap for a popular game called Zoonotic. First-person shooter. It's quite frenetic. I'm far too old to play it. I don't have the reactions to play it. I just play against the bots and still lose. I started making a snap out of it, and it was quite interesting to learn about the build process that the upstream developers have. This is an example of an application that isn't in the Ubuntu archive. It's not in the Debian archive. If you're an Ubuntu or Debian or Mint user, you would probably go and find some debs online somewhere from GetDeb or somewhere like that. Whereas if the upstream developers had their own snap, then they could push that to the store as and when they want to just stable release and time it along with their releases on other platforms like Windows and Mac and so on. But I was quite surprised myself that it only took a few lines of YAML to generate a Zoonotic snap package that I could then install and then start playing the game. And so I'm sat there playing a game that's been built out of the tip of their Git tree on my laptop. It's just brilliant. It's great fun. That's the kind of use case that I think people will really embrace.
Absolutely. And what I find amazing is that even though you would think like half of all open source, they all use auto tools. So you would think, okay, that's easy to solve, but every single project is a little bit different. You need to use some environment variable or set something, or I don't know, make install doesn't quite install the stuff where you want it to go. And that said, I think Snapcraft really copes well, even with those weird edge cases where things are a little bit different. And I get the feeling that we see a lot of recurring issues already. So I think that if we go through them like one by one, this is going to get much easier and much more enjoyable. Yeah.
Like there are some like things that use QMake, for example, that just need to know where all the includes and the libraries are. But then like something like Zoonotic, the build process is grab it from Git, run this script. You run this script called all. You just like run that and it will build it, and it does. And that might not be the way that they want to build the distribution version, but that's how you build it from Git, and you end up with a working snap. But that's unique to that one application. If we can show upstream developers how to package their thing with their unique way of building their thing that they know best, better than anyone.
Of course.
How they can package that up into a nice snap that they can distribute themselves. I think that's beneficial. So yeah, I think we've waffled on about the playpin enough. There was one other thing you wanted to mention about Snapcraft social. So keeping up to date with all of this stuff, it's fast moving, like you say, and there's lots of news. So Daniel, you've set up a whole bunch of social media channels that people can find out more.
Yeah, they're all new. So we would all like you to subscribe, circle, and friend all the Snapcraft social media channels. If you're on Twitter, it's at snapcraft.io, without a dot, without an underscore, just snapcraft.io. I'm going to paste them on the channel as well. On Facebook, same thing. So facebook.com/snapcraft.io. And on Google+, just search for Snapcraft and you're going to find it there. There's a google.com/plus something, but I can't quite remember it, so I'm not going to mention it here. I'm going to share the links on IRC, so please share them. There's going to be good stuff coming.
After this video's finished and encoded, we should add them all in the description underneath the video. So if anyone's watching this after the event, we'll stick them all in so you can get to them nice and easily.
Brilliant. Good idea.
Cool. Should we start with some questions?
If we have to.
It's kind of why we're here,
There's a few snappy things I could still mention, but sure, let's go ahead.
Okay, let's dive in. So the first one is from High Flying Hugh. Which Ubuntu app is the Wi-Fi radar scanner app to see which bands are being used? So there is such an app on Ubuntu phone, actually. I don't know if there's one for the desktop. I'm sure there probably are Wi-Fi scanners available for the desktop, but there was one actually just called Wi-Fi Scanner, and that's it running on my Meizu Pro 5, and it's currently not seeing any Wi-Fi. I don't know why that is. I may have turned Wi-Fi off to stop it notifying me of stuff. Oh no, there we go. So that's the 5 gigahertz networks you can see peaking in the middle, and it tells you the frequency and all that kind of stuff. And you can swipe up from the bottom as well. And if you swipe up from the bottom, it gives you a list of all of the networks. So you see them as like little peaks on here, and a list of them all there with their details and their MAC addresses and all that kind of useful stuff. And that was written by Michael Zanetti, who works on Unity 8 by day and creates a plethora of applications for Ubuntu phone by night. And also, does loads of other stuff as well. But it's called Wi-Fi Scanner. It's worth a look. Okay, next question is for Dragonbyte. I think this one's for you, Daniel. Snappy is included in Ubuntu 16.04. Does that mean Xubuntu, Kubuntu, Ubuntu GNOME, etc. all have it included?
No, not quite. We reached out to all the Ubuntu flavors before the Ubuntu release. So the way this works is we have these metered packages where we define this is all desktop stuff. Like this is all required desktop stuff, and this is optional desktop stuff, but there's this Ubuntu desktop. And that's the same thing for Kubuntu desktop, for Xubuntu desktop, for all of them. And the same for server. For all of them, we have these metered packages. So the flavors regularly sync with Ubuntu desktop and figure out what happened in the meantime. But it's a thing they do now and then, and sometimes they decide against pulling something new in. So we let them all know, snapd is coming, this is the hot new stuff, this is what you want. And quite a few of them said, okay, we're going to do the same thing. We like what we hear. So let me think. I know that Ubuntu Mate added it. Ubuntu, I would need to look it up now.
So some of them did, some of them didn't, is the short answer. But whichever way whether they did or not, you can install snapd on any of them, can't you? So the package that makes it, the package that actually makes it possible for you to install snaps is snapd. So if you've installed a flavor because you prefer that particular desktop and you want to try out snaps, you need to install snapd. But that's the choice of the flavors. They can choose what they include.
So I just had a brief look, and it looks like a lot of them pull in, or at least recommend Snapd. So a lot of them. So
good.
You should probably be good on most of them.
And if not, install Snapd. Super.
Simple.
Next question is from High Flying Q. How's Sky handling the hot weather? So Sky is my cat, one of my cats. I don't know where he is, but he generally doesn't like hot weather. No, but luckily it's been raining a lot recently, so he's been, wet. So that's good. Next question is from Dragonbite. Is there a LAMP-like Snap with Apache, MySQL, PHP? And does Snaps allow turning it on and off so the local web server is on for development work and can turn it off when not using it? Not sure if this makes sense. It makes total sense. And I don't think there is a LAMP Snap at the moment. However, there is at least one Snap which has LAMP-like things in it. So if someone wanted to make a LAMP Snap, that's the one I would look at as a basis for creating one. And it is Nextcloud. So you may be aware there's OwnCloud project, and now there's a fork of that called Nextcloud. There's a Snap in the Ubuntu store called Nextcloud. So if you just do sudo snap install Nextcloud, it will download the Snap, install it, and inside there is all those kind of bits and pieces like Apache, PHP, and MySQL, and so on. And they all have start and stop scripts. So the short answer is there is a package that does that kind of thing. It is in the store. There is a publicly available YAML file, so you could make your own development system that has a LAMP stack in it, and you could stop and start them. So shut them down when you're not needing them. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's quite easy to stop and start services to check the log, what happened in the meantime. You can also use, if you're interested in starting and stopping services, you can also use WebDM, which is like, how would you call it? Like an administration interface. You can also install snaps through WebDM, so you can just install that if you're interested in
awesome
admin stuff for an IoT device or something, or a headless machine.
I've just pasted the link to the Nextcloud YAML file. It's a bit of a monster compared to some of the others.
Right.
But you'll see in there, there's obviously some Nextcloud specific bits in that YAML file, and some configuration flags and so on. It's probably the most complicated, biggest Snapcraft YAML file I have ever seen. But it does show you, how you can have multiple components. Like it's got Apache, MySQL server, MySQL client, MDNS publisher, and some other bits and bobs as well. The actual bits for OwnCloud. It's quite a monster, but I think there's so much you can learn just from that.
Yeah.
About how Snapcraft works from that one package. Like, for example, there's a couple of comments in there about removing unused binaries that waste space. So if you're a developer and you make a package that has like loads and loads of binaries and loads of bits and pieces in it, but actually not all of them are needed for the Ubuntu package or for the Snap package, you could strip those out, or you could strip out the man pages, or you could strip out any part that you don't think is necessary. And so in this Nextcloud YAML file, it deliberately pulls out some of the MySQL binaries that you wouldn't need on a basic Nextcloud install on your local machine, which I think is pretty cute.
Beautiful. Needless to say, Kyle, who wrote this, is one of the Snapcraft developers, so he knows his stuff.
Good. Oh, well, that's exactly what you want, isn't it? You want samples written by the developers who know how this stuff works.
Absolutely.
Okay, next question is from Karmaduck, and he asks, is there an Ubuntu SDK Snap that can be installed on Arch? That's a good question.
It's a really nice idea.
Sorry?
It's a really nice idea. I like it.
It is. I don't think there is one yet. The best person to ask, I know the guys who mostly work on the SDK is Zoltan Balog and Benjamin Zeller. So if you go into the Ubuntu app devel IRC channel, Ubuntu-app-devel channel, and either type BZ and then press tab, or ZB and then press tab, you'll auto-complete one or either of them. It's quite convenient. You can get them both with just 2 keys and a tab. And ask them if they still plan on making a snap. I know they made one as a test. I don't think it was fully robust. It didn't do everything, but they're the best people to ask. And in theory, if it works on one system, the same snap should work on Arch as well. So that would certainly be an interesting option. Next question from Mario Grip. Sorry that I ask about this, but lower your pitchfork and tell me about OVH versus Ubuntu and Canonical. So
this was bound to.
Yeah, this was obvious. We knew this was going to come.
Right.
So the short answer is I don't know. All I've seen is what you've seen, which is a tweet from a customer, a partner, a supplier of Ubuntu to their customers, tweeting that they're unhappy with a communication that's come from Canonical. I don't know what that communication contains. I don't know what their reply contains. I don't know anything about any communication between the two. And without knowing those details, it's hard to really know what the situation is. It looks like someone is the OVH are upset at something, but I don't have the data to be able to give you an answer, unfortunately.
Right. Yeah, same here. What I can add to that is that one process when you're involved with Ubuntu in a commercial setting is that if you use Ubuntu for commercial purposes, make changes to it, and still want to call it Ubuntu, you should talk to Canonical first. And I could very well imagine that this is the conversation that's happening here,
right?
Because there's lots of impact on certification, on QA bits, and like if you make changes and still want to call it Ubuntu, like there needs to be a conversation happening around that,
right?
And
there's good reasons for that.
Yeah.
We've had situations in the past where someone has supplied something which they've called Ubuntu, which was a slightly customized build of Ubuntu, and actually had security compromises in it, in every image that every customer had. And so we would like people to not tarnish the Ubuntu name and say this thing is Ubuntu and then it's got flaws, and people point the finger at us because it's got our name on it and say it's your responsibility, you should have fixed that. When if we have no relationship with those people and we've not had any conversation with them, it's very difficult for us to argue against that. So that could be the situation, but we don't know because all we've seen is the same tweet you've seen.
Yeah. And what we just described is, in my mind, a very standard business practice. So it's not really it's a bit of a storm in a teacup maybe, but if this is the conversation, I think that's just.
Okay. Next question. Pitchforks down. So CMT asks, what's the weather in Paris this evening? Now, I think I know why he's asking me this. And this follows on to the next question a bit further down. So I'll come back to the Paris question when we come back to it in a minute. So let's skip over that one, and I will come back to it, I promise. Copypasta says, I've been playing with Snapcraft and it looks fine, but essentially, can you explain the difference between XDG apps and snaps? I don't know a huge amount about XDG apps. So, XDG apps is now Flatpaks, isn't it?
Right.
Right. I don't know a huge amount. I plan to learn a bit about Flatpaks and all the others, because Flatpak isn't the only one. There are a bunch of others as well, like AppImage and a couple of others. Because I keep getting asked this question, and I'd like to be able to answer it effectively, and the only way I can do that is by learning what all the others have. But at the moment, my brain is full of learning what Snapcraft and Snap is, but I will address that.
Same here. I like technical details. What I do know is that AppImage has been there for a longer time already. Their concept is that you, from your app, you build one executable thing that people can download and just run, and it will run wherever. And this has been there for quite a long time already. There's also this, what's it called, the Orbital Labs, which is has been around for a long time as well, and they are the tested players, like the tested software in this regard, like a good way of shipping a self-contained app to people, basically.
There's a whole bunch, really. There's like, so you've got AppImage, Flatpak, Docker, effectively, because Docker is a way of shipping apps to people.
Sure.
You mentioned Orbital. There's Nix, and Singularity is another one.
Right. There's quite a few of them, and there were like loads and loads of attempts to solve this problem, like in different ways. Like all had their own ideas about how security should work, how this should work. File size was a concern. Like everybody had their own ideas, and I would say that the tested and well-working bits, like what I kept hearing was AppImage and the Orbital Labs, which I haven't looked at yet. And Snaps and XDG apps are newer approaches to this, and don't have all the answers yet.
Yeah, I was quite amused to look at the if you go back to the very first commit to Snappy and the very first commit to XDG app, the first commit to both those projects was within 5 days of each other.
Really?
Yeah.
Brilliant.
I was quite surprised at that. It was like, it's one of those serendipitous things that, everyone is working on something like this. And
right.
So it's, ask us again in a couple of weeks when we're next on, and hopefully we'll have a better understanding of the difference between all of these.
Yeah.
But I appreciate the question. Yeah,
absolutely. But yeah, I think it's interesting to look at the old or not old, but the tested bits as well. It often sounds like, oh, this is Snaps versus Flatpak, blah 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 blah. But I mean, there's loads and loads of ways to solve the problem, which are used already. Like people are using them already, and it's not something new.
Cool. D Shimmer asks, I could be wrong, but it seems like you can only update individual snaps one at a time. Am I wrong? Is there a design reason, or will there be a way to dist upgrade your snaps one day?
That was a problem for a very short amount of time. It's fixed in Snapd already. So that was with Snapd 2.0.5 or something, and with the newest one, you just run snap refresh and you get all the goodness. Like everything's updated.
Sweet. So you should just be able to go snap refresh and not specify which one you want to refresh. But if you did specify one of them, like if I know there's a new version of Xonotic or whatever in the store, I can say snap refresh Xonotic and not download all of them, but just that one.
Right, just the 4 gig snap, not the small others.
Yeah, just that 2.4 gig snap I made. Yeah, which is not representative. It's because unfortunately the snap I made had TGA images, and so all the images are huge, and the map was like 1.5 gig in size. So yeah, that's
nuts.
Entirely my fault. That still works though. Nick011 says, what languages does Snapcraft support, and will there come new ones? Oh, that's an interesting question.
Yes, all of them, basically. No, Snapcraft came with support for Go, for Python, for CMake projects, auto tools, Perl stuff, and a handful of others. That's how we started. But in the meantime, we added support for ROS snaps. Just right now, Mario is working on what's it called, Rust plugin, and we're getting these new plugins basically all the time.
Yeah.
And it's like you wrote a Snapcraft plugin.
Yes.
It's not.
I caught the tone in your voice, Daniel. Even I wrote a plugin.
That's not what I said. That's not what I said.
No, it's the way it's. I'm projecting. Yes. I basically hacked together a QMake plugin, which was super easy. Actually, which I'm not a Python expert. It was. Do you know what was more difficult? Was finding the documentation for how QMake looks for libraries and setting the right environment variables. Once I got that, it was easy. It was like 10 lines of code, but understanding the build, because I'm not a QMake person, so I had to go and learn a bit. But if you were a developer who uses QMake, or if there's some other build tool you use or build system you use, you will understand that. And being able to make a plugin, which you might contribute upstream to Snapcraft, or the plugin could just live in your app folder because you're the only person who ever uses that. Like the one I think one app I used, a build system called WAF, WAF, which I had never heard of. So I wrote a plugin for it, and that works. And then the next one I looked at, oh, this also uses WAF. Oh, great! I've already got a plugin for that. So if it's something you think other people will reuse, you could contribute that plugin upstream to Snapcraft. If it's something really, really bespoke to your environment and nobody else is ever going to use it, then just put it in your own Snapcraft directory. And we've got examples of people who've done that. And then that's fine.
Beautiful.
So the next question is from A Honeybun, who says, your voice is robotic in Mycroft. So for those of you who don't know, and this goes back to CMT's question, Mycroft is a device which you can think of as being like the Amazon Echo, or a bit like Siri, or a bit like Google Now, I think it's called, where you can say things to it and it will act on those things. So you could say, what's the weather like in Paris, for example, which is why CMT asked me what the weather was like in Paris. So you can make it say stuff. I actually downloaded it today and installed it on my laptop, and it's got a kind of version of my voice in it. So I don't know if you're going to be able to hear this. I'll try it and see if I can get my headphone to come out through the microphone. Listen to this. I don't know if you heard that.
No.
Oh well, unlucky. So you'll have to go to Mycroft's GitHub page and get it yourself. But yeah, it's good fun. And the idea is you can add skills and intents and other bits onto Mycroft so that it can add different capabilities. So for example, if you've got a heating system and IoT or some other internet connected system in your house, you could speak to Mycroft and tell it to do stuff like turn the heating up, or I'm leaving now, and tell it to turn all the lights off, or whatever, that kind of stuff, or do something on your computer, or initiate things, start building this thing, or open the pod bay doors, Hal, or whatever you want it to do. It's quite
I never asked, like, how many hours did you sit there and record stuff, or was it, how much text was it?
So this all came up, me being the voice, the default voice. There are other voices.
Right.
Being the voice of Mycroft was kind of drunken conversation at scale earlier in the year when we were talking about it, and the CTO of Mycroft said, hey, you should be the voice of Mycroft. And I went, yeah, all right. And that was it. That was the agreement. And so they sent me, they tried a couple of options, and then they sent me through the details of a website, which anyone can go to, and anyone can record their voice, not for Mycroft, but for another reason, and it's called Vocal ID. And the idea of this website is you record your voice And people who have, for example, lost their voice for medical reasons, or they've been in an accident or something, and they want an artificial voice on a portable device like a phone, but they don't want it to sound like, you know, the default Stephen Hawking voice. They want it to sound like, you know, them. They can pick from one of the donated voices on the website that sounds a bit like them.
Wow.
So they can have it tuned. And sometimes if they've got some voice capability, they can still speak a bit, and the vocal ID people will tune it to try and make the voice sound as much like them as they want it to sound. And so I've donated my voice to vocal ID, and then Mycroft took that and talked to to vocal ID, took that and then did something with it and made a voice for Mycroft. But you know, you can choose other voices. You don't have to use my voice if that makes you feel uncomfortable.
It wouldn't, but wow.
It's quite funny when it's really easy to set up as well. I grabbed the latest release tarball from GitHub today, and there were like 3 commands you run, and they're all little shell scripts in the directory. You just do a build, a dev setup, and then start, and that's basically it. And then it starts talking to you. And if I run it now and then turn the microphone on and I say, "Hey Mycroft," it will start listening to me, and it only starts listening once you say the trigger word, "Hi Mycroft." And then you can say, you know, "What's the weather like in Paris?" and away it goes, and then reads the weather out to you. So, yeah, I find myself talking to myself, which is a bit weird.
I can imagine, yeah. Well.
Yeah. So, next question. Karmaduck asks, how can I use Launchpad to build a snap, like a PPA or something? You don't need a PPA, actually. I think if you just push your code to Launchpad, and it has to be your project with all the source code intact and a Snapcraft YAML in that root directory. You push that to a branch on Launchpad and then navigate to that branch on Launchpad. There's I think it's called build recipe link immediately below it. And you click that link and tell it you want to create a snap, and it will ask you what release you want the snap to be built against. That's basically it. You press the go button and it goes off and builds a snap. Am I right? I think that's it, isn't it?
Yeah.
I tried it the other day. It didn't work for my use case, but it should work for others.
I haven't tried it yet, but that's how it's supposed to work.
Yep.
And Launchpad should also be able to upload snaps to the store for you.
Oh.
I'm also not quite sure how it works, but the capability is there.
Oh, that's nice. So you don't even have you could just like test the config out on your local machine, push it to Launchpad, hit build, and it build it, and then throw it straight into the store.
Yeah.
That's cool.
That's how I understand it. The future is here, basically.
It's magic.
The Shimmer asks, what is the status of scheduling some of the great interview ideas discussed at UOS?
So this is tricky because people are often busy and it's hard to get people at this exact time on a Tuesday. But yes, we're still doing our best to get hold of people. Often people within Canonical go to sprints and they can go away for a week. So the week you need them, they're not around, and we have regular sprints. So it's a bit tricky. We are still working on it to get more interviews, and we always take suggestions as well. KZ650 I should probably say that in a more street way, but I can't because I'm old. Are there any tutorials for building snaps that you recommend?
Yes. Go to snapcraft.io. It gives you a nice tour of what Snapcraft can do, how it all works, and formatting is going to take you to the right places. And it mentions the mailing list, the IRC channel. Like basically, you're going to find all the information there to get started, and from there, you're going to find all the other bits and pieces.
Excellent, thank you. High Flying Hugh asks, what is the situation with buying an Ubuntu phone at the moment? Recently heard it's impossible. Yes, unfortunately, all of the places that were selling Ubuntu phones sold out. So there aren't any available to purchase right now. I am told there may be a new phone or phones coming soon, but I don't know any dates or models or where you will buy them or any other details at all. However, eBay is an option for some of you, but if you want to support, buying an Ubuntu phone, then I'm afraid you're just going to have to wait until another one is available. And as soon as it is, we'll let everyone know. Scroll, lots of chatter.
Dragonbite asks, can you have multiple versions of the same snap? So you can have your old snap there when you try your new snap, and if it doesn't work, just switch back. Yes. You should be able to do that with snap rollback. So that's going to give you rollback to the last version. Another option is using different release channels. So if you're developing the snap, you could have one snap uploaded to the stable channel, which is for all your users who rely on something stable, and then you upload something to the beta channel, something you want to try out, and if you don't like it, you can always go back to the stable channel just by passing the -- channel option on the command line. So that's pretty straightforward as well. And since, or if you're doing things manually, as most of the snaps, they're basically just mounted. So there's going to be little, there's little risk in playing around with snaps because they're going to be mounted. You can unmount them and then take the next one. So that's pretty straightforward.
That's another thing that's one of the unsung things about snaps that I don't think people often realize is that the snap itself is a self-contained compressed squashfs which gets mounted after you've installed the snap. So if you do a snap install Nextcloud, then you will get the snap downloaded, and that is a squashfs which gets mounted at a certain point in your file system under /snap Nextcloud somewhere. And you can go and have a look at all those files like you would like files in any other kind of package. But the point at which you want to get rid of it, you snap remove that package and it's gone. It's unmounted and the squashfs file is gone. You don't end up with all loads of orphan files all over your file system. There aren't a ton of dependencies that you necessarily have to remove. And I quite like that. I like the idea of being able to install something. I'm one of these people who installs something, has a play with it, and then, I don't actually need that after all, and remove it. And I don't necessarily clean it up well or get rid of all the dependencies. I should auto remove, but I like the way that Snap does it. I don't have to auto remove. I just like snap remove and it's gone, and everything that was with it is gone. And I like that. It's much more like, sorry.
No, go ahead.
It's much more like the Android or iOS way. You browse through a store, you install something, you have a little play with it. No, it doesn't meet my needs. Get rid of it, and it's gone. There isn't like a whole bunch of cruft. It's not like ye old days of Windows where you've got like stuff, libraries all over the place, or even still on Linux, you can have a bunch of packages kicking around that you don't really use anymore.
It's basically like the future's here. It's brilliant. Also, if you're a developer and if you're working on a snap, like you're doing lots of iterations, one thing you can do is snap try and then pass the snap name, which is beautiful because it mounts the thing for you and you can do edits in there and figure out stuff. And this is basically just for playing around with it and doing quick iterations and just see, okay, if I move this file, does it make it work? Or if I do an edit here, does it make it work? So that's also an option for you. I know it's not strictly related to the question of doing rollbacks and stuff, but as a developer, I think it's just beautiful to use.
So if you've built a snap, you can do snap try and then the snap name, and it will mount it, but it will mount it read write.
Basically, I don't know the exact details of it, but that's the way you use it. Yeah.
I did not know that. I keep learning these super tricks.
It's nuts. They're adding all the crazy stuff to it. It's just brilliant, and they have like releases every 2 weeks or something. It's I like it.
Cool. Next question is from Nick011. Any new Ubuntu Touch devices coming soon? We believe so. That's all I know. Sorry, my cat's just come in. Next question from D Shimmer. We've got 10 minutes left. If you've got any questions, get them in now, because we've only got 10 minutes left. Popey, is your participation in things like Linux Unplugged or Ubuntu Podcast something you consider part of the job to some extent, or just something you enjoy? You know, it is possible to enjoy your job. Are there other podcasts or public venues you join regularly? Yeah, I try not to go out in public very often. They put me away again soon.
If you know Popey, know Popey, you know he absolutely enjoys doing these things. Like it's pretty obvious.
They don't let me have keys. Like, I'm not trusted. So I go on Linux Unplugged because it's fun. So for those who don't know, Linux Unplugged is a podcast that happens on a Tuesday evening, my time, Tuesday daytime US. It's run by Jupiter Broadcasting. So Chris Fisher runs the show over there, and it's quite an interesting way he does it. They have a Mumble server, and if you install Mumble on your laptop or desktop or phone, you can connect to their Mumble server, and then if you've got decent enough audio, there's no loads of echo and background noise and stuff, then you can join a particular room on the Mumble server and just join in with the discussion. So when there's discussion about a particular Linux thing in the news, you can join in. Or if you're not interested in joining in, you just want to listen, just go to jupiterbroadcasting.com and you'll see Linux Unplugged. And I started going on the Ubuntu podcast. In fact, I started the Ubuntu podcast with a few friends before I started working for Canonical, long before I started working for Canonical. So I worked for Canonical for 4 years, and we're now in the 9th year of the podcast. So yeah, I don't consider that part of my job at all. It's just a fun thing that I like to do. We don't get paid for it. We're not sponsored. We're not, coerced in any way. It's just a bit of fun that I like to do with my friends. So yeah, that's it. Excuse me one moment. Can you take over? Because there's someone at my door.
Sure. All right. Let me see. What was the next question? Gucci asked, will Ubuntu Touch switch to Snap, or will it stay with click packages? Sorry if the question has already been asked. Very good question. Of course, the vision is to switch to snaps entirely over all form factors. And this makes a lot of sense because phones have been using clicks, and basically snaps are the evolution of that. Basically, we took the concepts that worked very well and fixed everything that we needed fixing, but Snap forged ahead, and it worked great on Ubuntu Core and for IoT devices. But now we're going to need to make some adjustments to make it work fine on the phone. So this is what's happening right now. So the answer is yes, eventually. Yes.
Where are we up to?
We're just talking about snaps on the phone.
Cool.
Now the next question is from KZ650 Are you aware of any time frame when Touch will move away from an Android kernel? I don't know.
No. And that's tricky.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
No, I was just about to say, for Ubuntu Touch, it makes a lot of sense because that's where we from Android we get a lot of solved problems. Basically, it's open source. It's what we like. We can fix it, we can do stuff with it, and going and rewriting all of this for no better reason than rewriting it, like that doesn't make sense. And so I don't know. I mean, if there's a particular component that needs extension, or I don't know, we would be better off using our own, sure. Or maybe there's some other open source alternative for it, sure. But I don't know why we would go and rewrite everything Android gives the Touch family.
Yeah, I don't see. Well, right now there's no real benefit to it because, like you say, there's just too much. If everything that was in those board support packages, everything that was on those phones, if all of that was upstreamed into the vanilla kernel, all the drivers and everything, then it wouldn't be a problem.
Right.
But they're not. That's the problem. So, the fact that the GPU driver, the GPS driver, all the radio drivers, maybe even the touchscreen driver, some of these things are just non-free. They're not upstreamed. There's very little we can do about it, and they only work on a very specific kernel. And it would take a huge amount of engineering effort for us to upstream that stuff that's not ours in the first place, because these are drivers that are made by companies like MediaTek and Qualcomm and others. We don't own that code, so we can't upstream it, and really it's up to them.
Yeah.
So it's very unlike the desktop world and the laptop world, where the drivers for everything, and the server world as well, where the drivers for like your RAID array or your IPMI card or whatever probably are upstreamed into the Linux kernel. So you could just go and get a Debian CD or an Ubuntu CD, put it in your server or your desktop or whatever, and it just works. With the phone, that just doesn't happen because there's so much that's non-free and that only works with those Android board support packages. So we have to use them. Unfortunately.
And basically, another way of looking at what Alan just said is that basically all the people who do phone stuff, they are in the Android world. And if you decide to do your own thing, you're also sort of on your own. So like if we talk to people and say, okay, we're seeing this problem, it's very likely that somebody else is seeing the same problem too, and we can work together on this. And this is where a lot of the phone knowledge is right now. So
if you compare that to how, for example, Tizen works, the difference with Tizen is Samsung control the entire stack. And so, they can potentially make drivers that work on Tizen for their devices. And you'll notice that Tizen is only available for a limited set of devices, in the same way that Ubuntu Touch is only available for a limited set of devices. In the future, that may change. I don't know.
Right.
But yeah, that's what we're stuck with at the moment.
And so another short answer would be, if we want to do this, we should have a very good reason. And what we're working with is open source. So it depends, like what your real interest is in like which problem you want to solve here. Like this is basically the question. Ow. Enough said.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Cool. I think we've exhausted all the questions and we've run out of time. So thank you everyone for your super questions. They were excellent. Lots of interesting discussions and meowing going on. Thank you everyone. Join us again next week on Tuesday at 1500 UTC when we'll be back with more questions and answers. Remember to follow Ubuntu On Air on Twitter, on YouTube and Google Plus, and on Facebook, and you'll get notification of when the next one of these and other videos go live. Thank you for watching. Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you, Alan. Had a great time.
Next time. Yes.
See you around.
Bye, everyone. Bye-bye.